Welcome everybody. Welcome back to EOS Phoenix Community Channel. Today is Sunday, June the 17th. Hope everybody's having a fabulous Sunday evening, and we're coming to you live. So, an amazing weekend. We had a pretty adventurous weekend within EOS, obviously, with all the fun there. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for tuning into my channel. I hope you guys are doing well. So before we get into things, I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to all the EOS family out there. I know, recently there's been a lot of FUD and a lot of uncertainty, it seems like, for some people, but it's just nice to know that, in the grand scheme of things, we're in really the first minute of a 9-inning game. So there's a huge road ahead, and this is just really the beginning. For those that have developed, products or software, that, there's always hiccups and bugs and issues. So EOS is no different than that, guys. The only difference being that, this is a global experiment, and it takes a lot of cooperation from everybody to, make all this happen. And the block producers have done, in my opinion, a pretty amazing job at just resolving most of those issues. So I'd encourage you guys throughout tonight's talk, if you have questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. That's why we have it up there. And, I also have today some information to share on what we've been doing locally here, and I actually wanted to share with you guys a contest that we're putting on, I think, within 2 weeks here in Phoenix. I also posted a link for those that are interested in maybe conversing with our team here. We're a small, enthusiastic group. We're not binded by any VCs or anything. We're self-funded, but we have a lot of initiatives we're looking to build tools for the community, and just help, start this discussion that is ongoing. Because I still go back to the fact that, if I, as a EOS holder, went around and gave away EOS tokens to people here locally, like within my neighborhood, and I just said, hey, here's some EOS tokens, most people would have no idea what I just gave them. So until we get to that point, guys, it's just, we're really, like I said, very initial stages of this whole thing. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in, like I said, and yeah, I think we should get into some things here. So I'm going to start with a pretty neat quote. I thought I'd read you guys. It's one of my favorite innovators, visionaries, if you will, and I've been just going through, studying different products and platforms that have been developed. And one of the companies I always go back to is Apple Computer. And if you guys remember, Apple's one of those companies that's gone through its ups and downs, throughout its years. If you remember when, for example, there was an ousting of Steve Jobs, or he left the company and then he returned, and there was actually an ad that ran that I think fits what EOS is doing, and a lot of these other projects actually are doing. So it's not specific to EOS, but it kind of ties into, I think, what this whole movement is about. And it's not about just the apps that is going to, I think, change the world or enable EOS to become successful. It's really the vision that EOS is putting forward and offering an alternative to the traditional system we have today in place. So I just wanted to read you guys this. I think you guys will enjoy it. And yeah, if you like this content, hit that like button. But it goes something like this. And there is actually a YouTube video I could also share on this, but I don't know. It's neat just to also, take notes on these things and just be aware of, I think we're going through a similar phase here with EOS. So it goes something like this, guys. So it says, here's the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs and square holes. The ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They invent, they imagine, they heal, they explore, they create, they inspire, they push the human race forward. Maybe they have to be crazy. How else can you stare at an empty canvas and see a work of art? Or sit in silence and hear a song that's never been written? Or gaze at a red planet and see a laboratory on wheels? We make tools for these kinds of people. While some see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. And I think if you, think about what EOS is looking to do, and some of the amazing people we have as BPs and just people within the community, I think they share that sort of philosophy. Because if you walked around and told anybody that, especially even as the BPs, they walked around, they told people that they invested all this money, invested all this time in founding the startup with the inherent risk that is inherent within cryptos, they would call most people crazy. But yet here we are, and it's an amazing thing to see it continue to thrive, continue to evolve. So shout out and big kudos to all the block producers out there for taking care of the chain. And I also want to give a shout out and make sure that people are aware of just making sure you do your due diligence on the block producers. There's a lot of block producers out there, obviously. Some are better salesmen than others, I'll say. And it's not to say that, people aren't doing a good job. But I think it's important to recognize technical talent where it is. So I'd encourage everybody to check out the entire list of block producers. Make sure you understand, who's contributing what. An example that is like EOS Tribe. I knew EOS Tribe because I was part of a block producer group that was looking to spin up a couple machines and test the chain and just get involved. And EOS Tribe, they had a pretty talented team there with Eugene, who actually ran many of the test nets before the whole chain even got spun up. But yet they find themselves not within the Prime 21 candidacy. And I'm not saying that just because someone has taken a leadership role to assist other block producer teams in testing and getting acquainted with the chain, that automatically gives them a ticket into the Prime 21. But I think it's important to recognize, where the technical talent resides, because the key to it is when we have issues, when we have technical challenges with EOS, it's going to take the technical expertise within the community to resolve those issues. And Eugene is one of those guys. So I'd encourage you guys to check out EOS Tribe. Again, I'm not, I don't get paid by EOS Tribe. I'm not affiliated with EOS Tribe. I just want to say that. And I've also had my own, I butted heads occasionally with Steve Floyd, one of their members there. But I do think that, technically they have probably one of the best guys within EOS. So I'd encourage you guys to check them out, and just check out who's available. The other thing I would say is give some thoughts to the diversity of the block producers. So I've noticed, for example, we don't have any presence in Africa right now. I mean, there is a backup there, but it'd be nice to see global diversity with the Prime 21 candidates. And the reason why that's so important is to make the block producer system, the chain itself, more resilient to any type of both collusion and other types of issues that might come up politically, for example. These are important aspects to consider. So these are things for you guys to think through as you're voting for these folks. And I know maybe like myself, you guys are also pretty cautious with voting right now because there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt with a lot of the code that's been developed. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. I see we have two folks here. We have You Can't Be Me and Mr. Rowbury. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And if you have any questions as we go along, ask away. That's what this is about. So if there's no questions at this time, I want to share with you guys a presentation tonight. This is going to be on what we're doing locally here. Let's see if I can adjust these things. Okay, let me do this. Okay. So the purpose of what I'm going to be presenting tonight is to kind of continue our chapter of walking through the community on, what some of the things you can do to maybe develop your idea. Okay, and if you remember, guys, where we last left off with this is, we were talking about this Oculus system, which talks about the motivations behind maybe an app that we would develop on EOS. And so I wanted to focus on, giving a concrete example. And I also want to emphasize that there's a huge difference between what versus why, right? And I guess what I'm getting at there, guys, is you can have you could have a system, you could have a computer, for example, like a general purpose computer that, has all the specs and does everything exceptionally. And you could have another computer that people just prefer. And, you might ask yourself, well, why is that? And so sometimes, people are motivated to use an app or to use a product, not necessarily because it serves a function, but because it appeals to them on other aspects of connecting with them from a humanistic perspective, right? So Apple Computer is like one of those companies that's been able to do that. If you look at Apple and you look at the products they make versus some of the other vendors that make PCs or laptops, from a spec perspective, the computers that Apple makes are on par or sometimes even less from a performance spec perspective. But what Apple does very well is they provide a vision to people. And so that would be why people, before even an Apple product is made, they've already decided that they want to buy an Apple product. Have you guys ever noticed that there's people in the world that we have all around the world that say before an Apple phone is even made, they are basically committed to buying the new phone from Apple. And it's about a vision, and it's about what Apple's basically been able to do to market themselves in a way. And I think what's very interesting about dApps is the dApps are going to see successful on EOS, are going to connect to people in providing them a vision, providing them an alternative way that they can create the reality versus what we have today. So it's not just going to be about, the best function, or, it's not going to be about, for example, creating just a ride-sharing app that connects people from point A to point B. That's no better than what we have today. The difference is going to be an app that engages the entire global community and incentivizes everybody to help them build their community. And so in that sense, it doesn't matter actually from my perspective, it doesn't matter who creates the idea. It doesn't matter who starts it. Because if the incentives aren't there for the entire community to adopt that idea, the idea itself is not going to be successful. So it's a very interesting woo-woo, bizarre world kind of environment, because in the old days, it was all about the idea. It was all about coveting your idea and holding it close to your chest and not giving that idea away. In the EOS community, or even in the Ethereum community, you need an entire ecosystem of community with you that is going to use your app to actually make it successful. Because if you don't scale, you're not going to be successful in deploying your technology. And if you look at a lot of the applications on Ethereum, they haven't been successful. Even if you look at CryptoKitties, if you study the volume of transactions on CryptoKitties, it's gone down. I mean, there's no real use case for it. I mean, it might be cute, but there's no real incentive for people to use it besides speculation. So that's what I'm focusing on here, guys. That's what this channel's about. Every week, hopefully every weekend, because I work right now, I like to do these at a better time, but this is, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are the only days I have to do these videos, study, help the local community with meetups. So that's why I picked this time. But these are the kinds of things I'm getting into, is studying the why and the what, which are two different things. So again, just going back to Apple, they do that very well. They execute both on the what, and they execute and provide the why for the consumers. So we're going to need to do similar things with EOS and ride sharing, dApps, whatever it is, we're going to need to do that. You Can't Be Me says, I'm an EOS holder in Florida. Moved here from Phoenix a few years ago. Well, that's awesome. I mean, I've been to Florida, and it's a beautiful place. I don't know what part of Florida you're in. I do like it here in Phoenix. I mean, it does get hot, 3 months out of the year at least, and that can be pretty boiling. But it is a beautiful state, and it's a change in scenery from California. So, but yeah, so let's get back into it, guys. So we were talking about developing the what versus why, and this goes for any of your ideas that you want to share with the community. But this Oculus structure I'm sharing with you guys, it kind of provides the framework by which you want to evaluate your idea. And what I mean by that is, some people are driven more by meaning. Some people like ownership, like maybe you give them wealth in some way for helping you. Some people like accomplishment, maybe it opens up more opportunities for them. Some people like to just feel empowered that their voice shapes the way you create your dApp. Some people are driven more by social influence. They want to become more popular. There's a scarcity aspect, maybe the tokens, and there's an unpredictability, which is another interesting one. So if you think about it, guys, really what we're building here is a better game. We're building a better game. We're building a better game against the legacy systems. That's what we're doing, guys. So keep those things in mind as you come up with your ideas and you share them with your friends and your community here. That's what this is about. So, and I notice here you say, You Can't Be Me says you lived in South Mountain. That's a beautiful place. I actually like to go hiking at that South Mountain region there. That's usually my typical hiking spot here locally. So, let's see, going to the next slide, guys. So I'm going to try to give you a concrete example of what I mean. And before I do that, here's the challenge locally that we're going to give our local community here within EOS Phoenix. We're going to give them this challenge. These are the kinds of things we're doing, but we're basically starting by creating our practice VC deck. So we're not going to be there yet. I mean, obviously, this is just for practice purposes now, but the whole idea is that over time, if we keep practicing and we keep working at exchanging ideas, not just within EOS Phoenix, but globally, if we work together as a team, and that's very important. That's another thing I was going to mention is that, just like I said about the what versus the why, the other thing that we're keeping in mind here in Phoenix is that we're not building apps for people in Phoenix. We're building apps for the global community. That means we need global partners. We need people in China. We need people in Korea. We need people in Florida. We need people in New York. We need people in Africa, Nairobi. We need, all of our partners, all of our community members to help us with the considerations of the dApp, because, culturally there could be differences. Maybe the interface is different that we would need in different regions. The user experience, what are the rules and regulations? How do we make it become as compliant as possible so that we can basically share that code and make it available to everybody, right? So everybody wins. We can't do that if we just design it for United States. It's not going to be very successful. It might be okay for a first use case, just to show that our incubator here in Phoenix, we can push out some awesome content. But for us to give EOS that killer dApp that I know we can all do, we're all capable of if we work together. We're going to need to work together and consider all the I guess all the issues or challenges when you deploy something globally. And that's very different than just doing something locally. So that's another thing we're considering here. But So just getting back to the presentation, guys, what we were looking to do here is form, teams between, we wanted to go, 3 to 5 people, but we're really small right now. So we're thinking maybe just, 1 to 2 people. And we have a Telegram channel. For those that even want to join us globally, you could just join our Telegram channel, or you can just, use your own community to do this exercise. But the whole idea is to brainstorm an idea, and there's, 4 main parts to brainstorming the idea, we think. One is to explain the problem or issue that you're trying to solve. And then, obviously, you want to present your solution to the problem. The other component to it, from a VC perspective, I think they're going to want to know is, why do you want to do it on blockchain? So any of the EOS VC guys, or any VC for that matter in your community, is going to want to know, why is blockchain, why does it make this solution better than what we could do in the legacy system? And it should be like multiple times better than what we have. Otherwise, it's not an attractive investment, right? And then how do we incentivize the community to support and use the application? And so that gets back to the point of why people would use it versus what they will use it for, which again they're going to be different. Those things are completely different in terms of what people use an app for versus why they used it. And we talked about that. So let's see what else we have here. We're going to create a 3-minute VC pitch deck, which we're going to present to the global community here. So this is kind of like the hero's journey for the folks locally here within EOS Phoenix, and maybe those across the globe, because it's just like it's a floor, it's an auditorium, right? It's a virtual auditorium is what we're going to have, because we're going to use maybe like Google Hangouts, and I'll be on here. I'll have a link for the Hangouts, and someone with an idea can jump on with their deck and just go. That's how we're going to do it. I mean, there's not really a formality to it. We're just going to keep practicing and getting better at it with the time we have. So an idea that sticks, hopefully we can at Comanity or UAT, which is where we're holding these locally in Phoenix, or also on here for those that are interested. Just shoot me a note, and we will make time to have your idea shared with the entire globe, which is pretty cool, I think. So that's the essence of the challenge, guys. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that there's other components that should be listed here to make this successful? I guess that's one of the questions I had is, if you guys were doing this, what would you guys like to see? If you guys were a VC, let me put it to the community, because you guys are VCs in a sense. Even if you don't give EOS to these projects, let's say you just listen to these things. You're a VC, because you're part of the community. And so you guys can help us in many different ways. It's not just necessarily giving funding. I mean, it could just be feedback on the idea. It could be critique. Poking holes in the ideas is very valuable. Coming up with maybe why it won't work in certain locations. Asking us if we thought about certain things, because it's very easy to think that something will work when you only have 2 or 3 guys and gals. It's a completely different thing when you have the entire community around you who's helping you to innovate. And I think that's where the best ideas are going to be. It's not going to be the best coders from my perspective, and I could be wrong. I think we'll get coders to rally with us and develop the solutions. That's how we're structured a little bit differently than I think most of the teams. So it's not a throwing salt in the wound or saying what they're doing isn't good. It's just, I think that to develop the right solutions and frameworks, having this discussion on the onset is going to help tremendously. And it's going to help us get easy user adoption, because we're going to have a community that's vested in our project. So, and we're going to reward people for that, obviously, because the way we are even setting these things up, we're trying to even develop a framework for that. And I'm going to get into that next. I'm going to show you guys what I mean. Because what I did is I want to challenge myself to show our local community maybe how this might be done. So we came up with what we are trying to create here as a first example. I don't know how long it's going to take us to do this, because I haven't coded in a very long time. It's not something I do every day. It is something I have some experience in, but Obviously, learning EOS and not doing coding for some time, it's going to be an adjustment, but that's okay. You know, I have people around here who maybe will be able to help, and I'll learn a lot along the way. So that goes back to the analysis I told you guys about earlier, which is, you know, my big motivation is meaning and accomplishment. So that's where I gravitate my motivation towards. It's not necessarily like making a huge bunch of money. It's like, you know, I feel like with EOS, good things are going to happen over time, because it's just the emotional energy and the investment that people have are going to allow us to, you know, accomplish a lot of things, and we're going to get momentum along the way. We're going to get new tools. It's going to become easier to develop. It's always more challenging in the beginning, but, you know, that's where you learn a lot too. So it is what it is. So yes. So where were we? So the whole point here, guys, is to create. So what we're trying to demonstrate here is a token, a community token called community shares. It could be called something else, and that's part of the challenge too, is, you know, asking the community if there's a better name for this once we explain what we're trying to do. But essentially, this is a way that we envision rewarding people for helping anybody across the globe with an initiative, whether it be a meetup, whether it be a presentation, whether it's a marketing campaign, you know, maybe it's an explanatory video on something. This is the way that you can be rewarded for helping. And you can even create these in your own community. So you don't have to use what we're doing in EOS Phoenix. You can basically just create your own as you wish. So you can actually just use the smart contract to create your own token in your community and give them away as kind of demonstrating the first real use case within EOS. And there's a lot of reasons for doing this. So here's my quick pitch deck for you guys. But like, for example, we saw, I don't know if you guys saw this like the past few days, but there was a gentleman who's like a huge crypto holder who was taking an Uber home. And he, I guess they basically robbed him of $1.8 million of his crypto funds. And so, you know, trust is a challenge in this market. Now, imagine when we have dApps that require peer-to-peer done locally or within a town. How do you establish reliability and accountability and trust with another person? And it's not so much even knowing the person's name, it's knowing that they're part of your tribe. If you study a lot of other cultures, not necessarily in the United States, but a lot of other places work from that perspective. They work from a tribal perspective. Maybe 20 to 40 people in that tribe who each know each other and who are each accountable. And then those tribes talk to the other tribes. But through this system of, you know, demonstration of attending meetings, being a participant in their communities, doing presentations, etc., developing basically a footprint on the blockchain, it's unlikely those people would want to ruin their reputation around the community. Okay, it basically takes a cost. There's a proof of work, if you will, not a proof of work from the perspective of Bitcoin, but it's a proof of work from the perspective of someone's sweat equity, which is, in my opinion, more secure than, you know, something like Bitcoin that can just be bought. So community shares is about providing a framework to enable communities to do this, to share and reward people for their work, and develop a trust framework for the communities to unveil their future dApps, because we're going to need trusted users to interact with. We don't just want to interact with probably anybody. That doesn't sound like a good idea to me, at least not yet. So here are the current challenges with the global user community. There's no current reward acknowledgement system for global participants planning presentations, doing any kind of coding, marketing efforts within the platform. You know, there are, obviously the BPs get paid, the dApp developers who are maybe airdropping tokens, they could get paid, but I mean, you know, there may be other things that are needed within the community. And, you know, I know the worker proposal system will cover a lot of this, should cover a lot of this, but I mean, some of the reputation aspects there may not. So we'd want to know, who is it, who is getting involved and what have they done in the past. And this provides an accountability system for initiative efforts made locally. And so I'll give you a good example of that. I can make an event. Okay, I could throw an event, and I can ask for people to help put that together. Okay, in fact, what I envision doing here locally is a local VC, a local venture capitalist, where I would fund the projects. But in order to fund projects, you need to know that those people are accountable, they're reliable, they're good people, they have a strong work ethic, and they're people of integrity. It doesn't make any sense to just throw a bunch of money at something that's not built on a strong foundation of people who understand the technology, are vested in it, and they care about the reputation. You don't just want to throw your money out at people who just hear cash and come running. So that's a very important component, and I think a lot of people miss that. So the governance structures within these communities are critical to success. They're critical because you need those tools in place, right, for you to commence and do transactions. So, also we want to be able to trial and pilot the technology. And again, we want to be able to interact with our peers, through our dApps for everyday services. So what is community shares anyway? What it is, what we're trying to do is create immutable records of user participation and non-participation within communities. Now, the non-participation is important because, again, you could have someone who says they're going to do something, but maybe for one reason or another, decides not to do it. And that's okay, but we need to have a way to track, when someone says they're going to do something and they don't end up doing something for one reason or another. That's reputation, and it's, I guess, the definition of it. Part of it is when you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. We need a platform to establish trust between community members. We need to reward community efforts across the platform, right? So we need a reward structure. And we need a governance structure for enabling voting for community decisions and transparency for the members. So you might ask yourself, well, why would someone want in? Why would someone want to help with this app or use it? Well, there's an ownership. So the early adopters and users of this technology, they actually get rewarded in tokens, and those tokens are backed by actual cryptocurrencies. You have the ability to acquire skills needed to launch your own dApp to the community. So that's a sense of accomplishment. You can see the results of the community working to demonstrate the power of open source blockchain software with your input. So there's a level of empowerment that's associated with that. And then, obviously the tokens, and here's the interesting part. This is the part I like the most. It's that what we envision doing is these tokens themselves, they would represent a ticket into an event. And so what I'm talking about there is, if you guys remember like the Tulip conference, or there's these other conferences where, there's always these conferences, and I'm not picking on Tulip, but even the Consensus conference, for example, that, they were charging people, I'm talking more here about Consensus. I think they were charging people around $1,500, maybe even more. You guys can correct me with how much it actually was. But my point is, I don't want to ever turn people away from a conference solely because of money. If someone is here in Phoenix, or they're locally, or they can get here, or maybe we throw 2 or 3 different conferences in different locations, I don't want money to be the reason why someone can't come to the event to learn valuable content, or the delivery or speakers that we would have. That should not be a reason. So one way around this, guys, is we have basically a way to do proof of work with the community. Meaning, if you want a ticket into the event, you're given the right to go. You're given the privilege to go in exchange for helping the community with building the content itself. What better way to demonstrate decentralization, cooperation, leveraging the talent really that's all around us just by doing this. And we'll blow those events out of the water. If everybody does their part and is accountable, we'll blow those events out of the water. And through the rehearsing of these weekly discussions and local meetups, we'll develop our content as well. We'll be ready to go. So I don't have a problem with doing that. And so here's the interesting part: is the folks that decide not to participate in the community, they have another option, right? To attend this event where there's going to be valuable information. They can elect to pay. So that's how it should be done. I think that's the fair way. That way, people who they don't want to pay for the event in fiat dollars, they can perform proof of work. And those that, maybe they don't want to make the time for this, they can just pay and they can attend. And everybody can, have this opportunity to get the information. So it really addresses a lot of the issues from that perspective. And that's something that bothers me, actually, quite a bit. I mean, it's just, to me, it's just, it's a little bit of an annoyance that these conferences just start to become such high numbers, like in terms of admission costs, that it almost is a barrier for people to even want to participate. So I even think for people who don't participate in proof of work style, like we're doing with these community tokens, they should still have an opportunity to come at a reasonable cost. So like you said, some booths cost upwards of 150K. That is crazy. I mean, you better be getting some amazing, I guess, input from community if you're willing to spend 150,000, is my opinion. So that's a little bit more about why people would want in. And obviously, the tokens themselves can represent tribal trust between members of a global community. So one tribe in Phoenix could talk to another tribe in Florida or China or Korea. So you can start to see that you're known by your tribe, and your tribe's reputation is an image of you. And so there is a way that now you can have not a legacy identity, but it's a way that you can have a digital identity from what you've done based on your proof of work. So it's a pretty interesting concept, if you ask me. It's the way I think these things, it's a solution I see for this, and it gets around the government issued ID fluff that some people would prefer. So just more information about community shares. We kind of talked about this. Here's a general framework of how something like this could work at a 50,000 foot view. This is not the whole logic flow diagram, but it just goes to show you anybody can do this, guys. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of work. I think we banged this out in a few hours. So I mean, it's not to say it's a done product. It's very messy, and I know the GUI doesn't look very nice, but I mean, this can be refined each week, and we can just improve it. And you guys can give us suggestions, and then we can just go from there. But what it's showing on the left is more of the logic flow. So it talks about, what co-founders, meaning that's anybody really, anybody across the globe can basically create their own community shares token and give it a name, and it would flow into the create community token platform, which would create your smart contract. And from there, community users could create their accounts, right, to join basically this guild. So they form and they initiate a request to join the guild. They're able to create their accounts, and through that process, the users themselves are able to create what's called missions. And missions are like in a game, right? You have a mission to do, and missions are something that you need to take care of, right? It's a task. So what we want to do is we want to empower people to create their own missions, basically ask other people for help, and to have the community step in to say, yes, I'll actually do that. A specific deliverable, and once they complete that task, a mission, they're given a reward. Now, the way we validate the reward is through it could be through a community consensus model. So, there's a vote that could take place from all the members of that community. And, if you get a 2/3 majority or whatever the criteria is that is set forth by the community, then that could be the criteria to reward those folks the tokens. So you guys might wonder why, how, I should say, this would all be funded. I think initially the way we're going to do it, the way I'm going to personally do it is I'm going to fund the community shares tokens here locally with a small amount of EOS, like basically built into the container. So all the tokens would have some value, and then it's ultimately up to the community to determine the consensus with me in terms of how these are rewarded to people. But as a starting basis, there would be some motivation beyond just a badge that says, yes, you did this work, and here's a badge for what you did. They could actually go to the open market and sell that community tokens for actual EOS or for Bitcoin or Litecoin, right? And they could, that would be their choice, or they can elect to hold on to it and basically gain a high reputation number for people to trust them in the community. So there's a balance of, I guess it's kind of like a game. They can choose your own adventure, choose how you want to use the technology, but it's basically would be available to them at that point. So that's really what I had on deck today in terms of what concept we were working on here. And I'd like to get feedback. On the right side, you could see the GUI interface, which is just showing you what we envision something like this would look like. So it'd have like your picture, you give your own account name, some name that you might prefer. It doesn't have to be your actual name. So like for my name, it's my name on Telegram, right, which is Urius. So that's how you would find somebody. And then, maybe on the right side is a tribe. So in our case, or in my case, it would be the EOS Phoenix tribe here locally. Obviously, if I travel, that could change, or there could be some interoperability between tribes. But it basically, shows both who I am and, where I'm from. And then, I don't know if you guys can see it, but on the bottom here, there's a couple different tabs. You have a profile tab, you have an account tab, you have a messaging tab. So you have different types of tabs that basically you can interact with, as well as an events tab that is tied to, again, seek the community missions. On the bottom is your rating of some sort, so maybe you get a rating out of 10, or maybe it's a percentage rating, but it basically shows how strong of a community member you are relative to the other members, also relative to your history, how long you've had that account. So that could be derived in some way. And then, at the bottom is your total token count and then your account creation. So this is just meant to be an example, guys. It's not meant to obviously make, lots of money for people. That's not really the motivation. The motivation here is to create tools that build other tools. And so part of that is, you got to have accountability. You got to have a reputation. You got to have a sense of trust so that you can actually grow this out. Because part of the problem is, like, for me, I like to form a team of some kind, and it'd be nice to get some funding for a team, but I mean, you need to have a couple things. You need to have the right talent. You need to have the right accountability within your team. You have good communicators, people who are accountable. So there's a lot of components to it that I think some people overlook, and they just think, well, let's get the funding, and they forget some of the other components that go along with it, the bells and whistles of what that actually means. So again, that's what we're about, and I kind of walked through at least how we envision it here occurring in terms of the different roles, and I think I've shared some of that with you guys in the past. But I envision something like game designers being a very critical role within EOS. Game designers who understand, developing reward incentive frameworks is going to be important, right? What else could we have? We could have prototypers, right? People who design a user experience. You saw my crappy example of putting together, my dApp, but that's based on an hour's quick sketch work, right? With someone who's not really an expert on user experience. Now, obviously, I'm going to learn along the way, but I mean, there's probably someone in my community who's a lot more talented than me in doing something like that. There's a whole global community that can poke holes at what I did and help me improve it, right? So if you guys see issues with that, or you see things that could be improved, let me know, because I can take that and improve it, and then next week show it again, and just keep working on it on an iterative process. And the whole point's not to ICO to make a bunch of money. The whole point's just to give it away and show that yes, we know how to build a DApp, and come around when we have a real or bigger idea that we need to deploy. We have basic foundations within our community to do it. We're not relying on, not to say that big block producers are bad, but we don't need to rely on anybody to build our technology. We can do it ourselves. We can even fork the chain if we need to. These are the kind of skills that we're going to need to have as people within a true decentralized community, in my opinion. People who can communicate, people who can lead. You don't need to wait for Block 1 to tell you these things. You just go do it, is my opinion. So that's really what I want to share with you guys today. I'd like to hear, your thoughts on some of the things you guys are working on, or what are you excited about, the most. I'd like to know, in your communities, are you, participating? Are you helping others? Maybe education is, a starting point for some people here, that you guys, really underestimate your value within the ecosystem, right? The fact that you're here on a Sunday night, at 7:30 here in Arizona, it says a lot. A lot of people are probably, they prefer to watch a sports game. Maybe a lot of them are watching FIFA right now. So that's not to say that's bad. I'm just saying that it's hard to find people who are actually dedicated to a lot of these things. So sometimes you just have to put exactly, you can't be me. Sometimes you just have to put yourself out there, and whether it's perfect or not, I think what I'm learning is, you have to try. A big part of it is just doing it, right? A big part of it is failing. And if you don't put yourself out there, you actually never will know what could be. So a big part of it is just trying and seeing what's going to work. And we don't know where that idea is going to come from. We don't know. It could be in your community, guys. It could be in Florida. It can be in New York, wherever you guys are. These ideas could truly come from one of the members in the communities that you guys form in your meetup groups. And you guys laugh about it, but it's true. All this is possible. It just, people sometimes need encouragement. Maybe they need to understand the technology a little bit more. And, a lot of people aren't there. A lot of you guys are well ahead of the curve. I mean, when you think about it, guys, I always go back to this, but I said it in the beginning, if you gave away 1,000 EOS to your neighbors, would they know what to do with it? I always go back to that because, the answer is no. That's a problem, okay? So until we get to the point where we can have a conversation with people, they understand what this technology can do from a utility standpoint, we have a long way to go. And there's roles for each of you to become effective communicators. So I'd encourage you guys, whatever you guys can do, please help the community, because the block producers themselves, they are very powerful and they can do a lot, but at the end of the day, their numbers are limited. They're limited. They're a finite number of block producer folks, and a lot of them are busy doing the security of the network, right? A lot of them are spending time doing that. A lot of them are also doing their own thing with their own apps. And, that's where I think it's a good idea that they're doing that. I just think that it would be nice to see a few of the block producers kind of take a step back and kind of think about strategically how to execute a DApp with the community in mind from the start, and giving the community the tools to fish. Because there's a difference between giving the community fish, which is what the airdrops are doing, and teaching the community to fish. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to teach. I like to partner with other people to teach teach myself even, how to fish. Because if you guys think about it, what this project, the EOS project, potentially will do is we'll change the entire framework of how the economy is structured. And if that happens, the change will be very rapid, and there will be a big need for people with the education expertise to help their local communities, right? It might happen a lot faster than we think. And you can't expect some company like Uber, who's existing today, to try to change with the technology. They're not going to be able to. It's too fast. It's too challenging for them to do it. The best they can do is maybe, figure out some added services. They could work with a decentralized app that's built on EOS. Maybe they can do something like that, but that's only temporary. Eventually, even a company like that that's worth billions of dollars now would fold. A company like Netflix potentially will fold. A company like Facebook will fold. Do you guys know how much? Have you guys looked at the market cap of these companies? I mean, this is serious business. Last time I checked, Facebook, and I mean, a lot of this probably is speculative with the FANG stocks, but Facebook I think was worth above $500 billion. Facebook alone, guys. Netflix was, I think, worth $80 billion. These are huge companies, and EOS for sure has the potential to disrupt all of them. So it's not a small game we're playing, and that's only two industries. Now you think about the others that are basically, the FANG stocks. That's what they call them. But if you think about it, that's really what the legacy systems are going to be up against. So in a sense, we as a community, the people in here who are aware of that, who may work in an industry now that may be transformed, it's in our best interest to think about and learn at least, the necessary components to help these companies maybe adopt, or help our friends change and transition, right? Because you don't actually know how fast it's going to be. It can change a lot faster than I think what most people are expecting. It could be slower too, but it could be faster, right? We don't know. I mean, look at the internet. It really only takes one dApp. It really only takes that one dApp to open the floodgates to this technology. And you haven't seen it yet, obviously, but I think my own thought process is within the next year, you are going to see it. And so once that happens, in a sense, it'll be good news maybe for you if you're on this channel watching, because you're ahead of the game and you probably hold EOS from that perspective. But on the other side, it could be, a need to transition as well, right? And reinvent yourself into this new ecosystem. So I would say connecting with others around you, helping your family, keeping your health up, those are the most important things right now. But connectedness is very important. Your reputation, becoming a SME in your town may be the most valuable investment you can make right now, because it's wide open, right? There's no one in your town. If you go to Florida, if you go to, New York, they have the New York guys. But if you go almost anywhere else besides New York, LA, Hong Kong, South Korea, there's places there. But if you go anywhere else around the United States, at least, there's not a huge amount of people who even understand this. So by just putting out videos, by collaborating with other people, you can definitely make a name for yourself in a good way and open up a lot of opportunities that you might otherwise not have. So unless you have your dream job, I would say there's a huge opportunity out there for you. So I'd leave it at that. Do you guys have any other questions, or what are some apps you're looking forward to? Are you guys following a lot of those projects and where things are at? I would say the one I'm looking forward to the most would be Everpedia. I think that will show the first real example of how EOS can transform even these legacy platforms, right? Like a Wikipedia. And it's funny because a lot of the books I read, some of them talk about that, they're so surprised that you have people at Wikipedia that do such censorship to content. So Everpedia is going to be huge. I don't know what else to say. I mean, that's, to me, the most exciting, just not from making money, but just, I would say It can't be me. It's pretty funny. Yeah, there's only 3 of us online now. But I guess some people just like to watch too, and that's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. And, part of it is, I think, for myself, learning what you guys like in terms of times too, because I know I haven't been consistent. So just being consistent with time, I guess, is important for these videos and just connecting with people. So if you guys have a time that works better, I'll be more disciplined and try to be consistent with these videos or outreach efforts. I really like talking to people. I really like, I learn a lot from interacting with you guys. And part of the challenge locally here is that there's not a lot of people who even are into cryptocurrencies, if you could believe that, in Phoenix. I mean, Phoenix is a metropolitan city. You'd think it would have a lot of people that are into these technologies, but surprisingly, our teams are probably around 5 or 6. I think at the launch we had our best turnout, which was in the teens. But you have people who come in and it's all for them. It's only about making money, and they're in and they're out, and that's it. And then you have the, what I call the crypto nerds, or the hardcore people like myself. And I'm going to be around. I told the people around me that whether EOS is 50 cents or $100 or $500, assuming that we bang out this technology and we show what it can do, I don't really care about the price. I like the ability that it gives to create a new world, to create, freedom for people, to give them an alternative to what they're doing. That's what I would like, because I know everybody has a superpower, everybody has talent, and some of us are, let's face it, we don't have a choice every day on what we do. We don't have a choice on what we create. We basically have to go to the same job, do the same thing. And, I'm not saying that's a bad, those legacy institutions aren't bad. I just think it doesn't have to be that way, right? It doesn't have to be. But somehow we were given this narrative that it does. So that's another component to this, is not even just so much the money or making money off EOS like 10 times or 100 times what people are saying. Some of it is just using it as a tool. Like if there was a tool that allowed me to get up in the morning and decide where I want to work, right? And, make a decent living, for me, that's a huge accomplishment. So, there's different drivers for different people. I know some of the people here are in it totally for investment. I think it'll still do well, assuming we're able to all contribute to this, but it's really going to take your help, guys. So I'd encourage you guys, again, to, reach out to your local meetup. Start a local meetup group if you can. It doesn't cost that much. And, start educating people. Make it a challenge for yourself to explain something to someone else, because that's the way you master content, right? If you can explain it to someone else who knows nothing about cryptocurrencies and they get it, that means you have a mastery of the subject, which is an important thesis, or it's an important component to even your investments, right? If you don't understand the technology, then why be in it, I guess, is my perspective, right? So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's late. If you like this content, hit that like button. Tell your friends and family. And if you have a suggestion on a time that works better for this meetup that's going to be done globally, let me know. Put it in the comment section. And if you have a question that I didn't get to, or you have a question later, just, again, add it there. We can talk about it. If you have ideas you'd like to see, or you have a question about, how to develop an idea, or you like coverage on a certain topic in terms of coding, I can try to do that. It is a little bit more challenging to set everything up for that. I mean, I did set it up on my computer to do a lot of that work. I'm learning as I go with a guy by the name of NS James. If you guys have seen his videos, he's pretty good. And so that's one thing I've been asking the other BPs about is, I'd like to see a BP step up and give more tutorials on dApp development, So it's great that they're building dApps, but I think what I want to learn is I want to help other people build their own dApps, right? We want thousands of dApps, because 90% of the dApps are going to fail, guys. 95% of them maybe. So the more people we can have built dApps, the higher the chances are we're going to find the killer dApps within our community versus Ethereum. And that will be the big difference between, I think, Ethereum and EOS, is that we'll have more developers, we'll scale faster, we'll have a better community, we'll have more people involved. The only way you can do that is through education. So thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. Hit that like button, and I will see you next week. Thanks so much. Ciao.